Hello everyone, welcome back to Motivational Journey. Sometimes, the most powerful transformation doesn't happen when you're surrounded by people, it happens when you're alone. In a world full of noise, constant comparison, and endless distractions, solitude has become rare, almost uncomfortable. But being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. Being alone means you finally have the chance to listen to your own heart, to hear your own thoughts, to meet yourself again. When you spend time alone, something powerful begins to happen. You start to hear your own voice again. In a world that's constantly shouting at you to move faster, do more, and be someone else, solitude gives you the space to pause and remember who you truly are. Being alone isn't about isolation, it's about reconnection with your thoughts, your emotions, and the deeper parts of your soul that get buried under everyday noise. Most people run from silence because it feels uncomfortable at first. When everything around you quiets down, your mind starts speaking louder. All the things you've been ignoring, your dreams, your pain, your doubts, come rushing to the surface. And that's exactly where healing begins. In solitude, you see yourself clearly, without the filters of society, without the opinions of others shaping your identity. You begin to understand your strengths and your weaknesses without judgment. You recognize what truly makes you happy and what drains your energy. You start to notice patterns, the habits that help you grow and the ones that keep you stuck. When you give yourself permission to step away from the world, you create space for self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of personal growth. Most people spend their lives reacting to people, to events, to expectations. But when you're alone, you shift from reacting to reflecting. You begin asking deeper questions. Who am I really? What do I want from my life? What kind of energy am I giving to the world? These aren't questions you can answer while scrolling through your phone or constantly surrounded by others. They require silence, stillness, and courage, the courage to face yourself honestly. Solitude reconnects you with your intuition, that inner compass that always knows the right direction, even when your mind is confused. When you're constantly surrounded by external opinions, your intuition gets drowned out. But when you're alone, you begin to hear it again. That quiet whisper that says, "This is right for me," or, "This isn't my path." Following that inner voice is how you start living authentically, instead of living a life built on what others expect from you. There's also a deep emotional cleansing that happens when you're alone. You begin to process feelings you've buried for years: sadness, anger, disappointment, fear. At first, it's uncomfortable to face them. But once you allow those emotions to rise and pass through you, you feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. That's the power of solitude. It gives you the time and space to heal emotionally and mentally, without pressure or distraction. Another beautiful part of being alone is rediscovering your passions. When was the last time you did something just for you, not for approval, not for attention, but simply because it made your soul come alive? When you're alone, you reconnect with those small joys: reading, writing, creating, walking in nature, or just sitting quietly watching the sunset. You start doing things that feed your spirit instead of draining it. And slowly, solitude turns into strength. You stop feeling lonely because you realize that your own company is enough. You no longer chase validation because you've built a relationship with yourself. You become your own friend, your own motivator, your own healer. The more time you spend alone, the more you learn to trust yourself, your decisions, your energy, your vision for life. Being alone reconnects you to the essence of who you are, not the roles you play, not the mask you wear, but your true self. And when you know yourself deeply, you stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop living by others' opinions and start living by your own truth. That's why solitude isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's strength. It's freedom. It's where your soul finally breathes again. Being alone is not a weakness, it's a form of emotional strength that many people never learn to master. When you're constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to rely on them for comfort, validation, and emotional balance. You start believing that happiness comes from external sources, from people's approval, from relationships, from constant interaction. But when life forces you into solitude, you begin to discover the truth. Emotional strength is built within, not found outside. Spending time alone teaches you to handle your emotions, to understand them, and to manage them without depending on anyone else to fix how you feel. When you're alone, every emotion that you've been avoiding comes to the surface. The loneliness, the fear, the insecurity, they all show up because there's nowhere left to hide. But instead of running from them, solitude gives you the courage to face them. It teaches you how to sit with your feelings without judgment, to let them move through you instead of controlling you. This process is uncomfortable at first because we're conditioned to escape pain, to distract ourselves whenever we feel uneasy. But the truth is, emotions only heal when they're acknowledged, not avoided. Alone time gives you that space to process them in a healthy way. Emotional strength isn't about being cold or detached, it's about being grounded. It means you don't fall apart every time someone leaves, you don't lose yourself trying to please others, and you don't depend on constant reassurance to feel worthy. When you learn to be okay on your own, you develop a sense of inner stability that no one can take away. You start realizing that peace doesn't come from people or things, it comes from acceptance, from understanding that everything you need to feel whole already exists within you. Solitude also helps you master emotional control. When you spend time alone, you become more aware of your reactions and triggers. You start seeing patterns in your behavior, how you respond to stress, rejection, or disappointment. Instead of reacting impulsively, you learn to pause, reflect, and respond with wisdom. This kind of awareness builds maturity. It makes you emotionally independent, so even when chaos surrounds you, you remain centered. You become the calm in your own storm. Being alone also teaches resilience. Life isn't always kind, and people won't always stay. When you've spent time strengthening yourself in solitude, you no longer fear loss because you know you can stand on your own. You stop clinging to temporary people or situations because you've learned to rely on something permanent, your own strength. This doesn't mean you stop caring about others, it simply means you don't let your happiness depend on them. You love freely, but you don't depend desperately. Emotional strength also comes from learning how to comfort yourself. When you're alone, you figure out what truly soothes your mind and heals your heart. Maybe it's prayer, journaling, meditation, exercise, or simply silence. Whatever it is, you learn how to take care of your emotional needs without expecting someone else to do it for you. That's real self-love, not fancy quotes or external validation, but the ability to sit with your pain and still find peace inside yourself. The more time you spend in solitude, the more confident you become in your ability to handle life. You begin to trust yourself, your instincts, your decisions, and your emotional responses. You stop fearing heartbreak, rejection, or failure because you know you have the strength to recover. You stop begging for attention because you've learned that your worth doesn't shrink when someone overlooks you. In the end, being alone shapes you into a stronger, wiser, and more balanced person. It teaches you how to carry your own peace, no matter where you are or who you're with. It shows you that you are not dependent on the world to feel whole, you are already complete. And when you reach that point of emotional independence, you become unstoppable, because no one can shake a person who has found peace within themselves. Healing is a process that requires stillness, honesty, and time, three things that are almost impossible to find when you're surrounded by constant noise. When you're alone, you give your mind and soul the space they need to breathe, to process, and to let go. Solitude becomes like a mirror, showing you the parts of yourself you've ignored or suppressed for too long. The truth is, most people stay busy not because they love it, but because they're afraid of what they'll feel if they stop. Being alone removes those distractions. It forces you to face what's really going on inside, the pain, the regrets, the heartbreaks, the fears. That's where real healing begins. When you step into solitude, your emotions no longer hide behind noise. You start to notice how heavy certain memories feel or how much energy some relationships take from you. You see your wounds for what they are, not as weaknesses, but as places that need care and compassion. Alone time gives you the chance to sit with your pain, not to relive it, but to understand it. You begin to ask questions like, what is this feeling trying to teach me? And, what do I need to let go of to feel free again? In those quiet moments, you realize that healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about making peace with it. Being alone also helps you stop chasing temporary fixes for deep emotional wounds. Instead of distracting yourself with people, social media, or work, you start focusing inward. You learn that healing is not an event, it's a slow, gentle process. It takes patience and self-compassion. Sometimes you'll cry, sometimes you'll feel lost, and sometimes you'll think you're not moving forward at all. But every moment you spend reflecting, forgiving, and releasing, you're actually growing stronger. Every tear shed in solitude waters the roots of your strength. Another powerful part of being alone is learning to forgive, not just others, but yourself. Many people carry guilt, shame, or regret for years, unable to move on because they've never truly faced themselves. When you're alone, you no longer have to wear a mask. You can be vulnerable, honest, and raw with yourself. You can admit your mistakes, accept your flaws, and begin to forgive yourself for being human. That self-forgiveness is the foundation of emotional healing. It clears the path for peace to enter. Solitude also allows your nervous system to reset. When you're constantly overstimulated by people, conversations, and expectations, your mind stays in survival mode. You're always reacting, always rushing, always trying to keep up. But when you're alone, especially in silence, your body relaxes, your breathing slows, and your thoughts begin to settle. This calm state helps your mind process emotions more clearly. It's in this stillness that the pieces of your soul begin to realign. Being alone doesn't mean you shut the world out forever. It means you take the time to rebuild before returning to it. Think of solitude as a healing sanctuary, a safe space where your soul can rest and recover from the chaos of life. You learn what boundaries you need, what kind of energy you want to surround yourself with, and which relationships are healthy for your growth. When you re-enter the world after true solitude, you do so with more clarity, strength, and self-respect. Most importantly, solitude teaches you that you are your own healer. No one else can fully understand your pain the way you do, and no one else can fix what's inside of you. Others can support you, but the real work happens when you face yourself. When you sit in silence, listen to your heart, and allow the wounds to breathe. That's when transformation begins. In the end, being alone is not a punishment, it's an opportunity. It's your soul's way of saying, slow down, I need to heal. And when you honor that call, you don't just recover from your pain, you rise above it. You emerge wiser, calmer, and more connected to yourself than ever before. When life becomes loud and chaotic, your thoughts scatter in every direction. You find yourself jumping from one distraction to another, constantly reacting, rarely thinking deeply. In that endless motion, clarity fades. That's why solitude is so powerful. It clears away the noise and gives your mind the freedom to breathe, to think, and to create. When you're alone, your mind begins to slow down. You stop absorbing everyone else's energy and opinions, and suddenly, your own ideas begin to surface. What was once blurry becomes clear. What once felt confusing starts to make sense. This is the beauty of solitude, it brings clarity that chaos can never offer. Being alone removes the pressure to perform or please others. You no longer have to filter your thoughts or explain your feelings. You can think freely, without judgment. In that quiet freedom, creativity awakens. The greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders throughout history often found inspiration in solitude because their minds were no longer crowded by the world's noise. When you spend time alone, your imagination expands. You begin connecting ideas, seeing patterns, and dreaming bigger. Inspiration flows naturally when you're not trying to meet anyone's expectations. Solitude also gives your brain the rest it needs to function at its best. Constant stimulation, from social media, conversations, and responsibilities, keeps your mind in a reactive state. You're always processing information but rarely creating new meaning from it. Alone time allows your thoughts to settle like calm water after a storm. Once the surface stills, your mind starts reflecting deeper truths. You begin to see your goals more clearly, understand your priorities better, and make decisions with confidence. This mental clarity is impossible to achieve when your attention is constantly divided. When you're by yourself, your focus shifts inward. You begin asking powerful questions. What do I really want in life? What am I passionate about? What's no longer serving me? These questions open the door to new insights. Solitude becomes a kind of personal brainstorming session where your mind is free to explore without limits. You might find creative solutions to problems that have been bothering you for months. You might come up with a new idea, a project, or a dream that reignites your purpose. That's the magic of being alone, it turns confusion into vision. Creativity also thrives in silence because silence allows you to hear the whispers of inspiration. Sometimes, your best ideas appear when you're walking alone, sitting quietly, or simply daydreaming. These moments may seem unproductive on the surface, but they're when your subconscious mind is most active. It's sorting through experiences, connecting dots, and forming new ideas without pressure. That's why many artists, writers, and innovators intentionally seek solitude, because it's in isolation that creativity breathes. Being alone also gives you the courage to think differently. When you're surrounded by others, you often conform to group thinking, even without realizing it. But solitude gives you the space to explore original ideas, to trust your intuition, and to see the world through your own eyes. It removes influence and replaces it with authenticity. You stop thinking about what's popular or acceptable, and you start thinking about what feels true. This is where innovation and deep creativity come from, not from fitting in, but from daring to think freely. Most importantly, solitude nurtures focus. In a distracted world, focus is a superpower. When you're alone, you can give your full attention to your thoughts, your craft, or your passion. You enter a state of flow, where time disappears, and all that matters is the present moment. That's when your creativity reaches its highest potential. You produce work that's meaningful because it comes from your true self, not from external noise. In the quiet moments of solitude, creativity and clarity walk hand in hand. You begin to see life with a fresh perspective. You find answers to questions you didn't even know you were asking. You rediscover the joy of thinking deeply and creating freely. Solitude becomes your workshop, where ideas are born, dreams are shaped, and clarity is restored. And when you return to the world, you carry with you a renewed vision, one that's grounded in peace, powered by creativity, and guided by inner clarity. Learning to love yourself begins with learning to be alone. When you spend time with yourself, without distractions or validation from others, you begin to see who you truly are beneath all the layers of expectation. Being alone gives you the space to notice your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, and slowly, you start understanding yourself on a deeper level. It's in this quiet companionship with your own soul that self-love begins to grow. When you stop running from yourself and start sitting with yourself, you realize that you are not broken, you are simply human, learning, evolving, and deserving of love just as you are. Many people struggle with self-worth because they have never truly met themselves outside the influence of others. They define their value through attention, approval, and relationships. But when you're alone, those external mirrors disappear, and you're left with the pure reflection of who you are. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, even painful, because solitude forces you to face insecurities you've avoided. But over time, you begin to see your strengths, your resilience, your uniqueness. You begin to appreciate your own company. And when you start enjoying your presence, you stop chasing people who don't value it. Being alone teaches you that your happiness doesn't depend on anyone's presence or absence. You realize that peace is not something others can give you, it's something you create for yourself. You begin to fill your days with things that make your soul feel alive, reading, writing, meditating, creating, or simply resting. These moments of connection with yourself build inner confidence. You start trusting your own voice, your own judgment, your own rhythm. And when you trust yourself, you no longer need external validation to feel complete. That's true confidence, the kind that cannot be taken away. Solitude also teaches you boundaries. When you spend time alone, you understand what feels right and what drains your energy. You begin to recognize the difference between connections that nurture you and ones that exhaust you. This awareness helps you protect your peace. You stop saying yes out of guilt or fear of being alone. You say yes only when it aligns with your well-being. That's a powerful act of self-love, choosing yourself over pleasing others. It's not selfishness, it's survival, it's growth, it's respect for your own energy. As your relationship with yourself deepens, your confidence begins to radiate naturally. You no longer need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't chase love because you've become it. You don't crave validation because you validate yourself every day through self-care, self-respect, and self-belief. The opinions of others lose their power over you because you know who you are and what you stand for. This inner confidence doesn't shout or boast, it's calm, steady, and unshakable. It's the kind of confidence that makes you walk into any room knowing that you belong, not because others accept you, but because why?